Welcome to the CX Sessions from the Customer Experience Innovation Institute. Every episode, we provide an innovative perspective on customer experience from the people who are changing your world, one experience at a time.
Hi and welcome back to CX Sessions from Melbourne, Australia. I'm your host, Simon Chris, and joining me today is the wonderful Kristy Canning. Kristy, welcome to CX Sessions.
Hi, Simon. Thank you for having me.
Always happy to talk to you. As I do with speaking to other Australians, I always like to stop and just acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we work, rest and play, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I might kick off, Kristy, by just asking you to introduce yourself a little. What are you doing these days? How's life in CX?
Definitely. Well, Simon, I've worked in senior management roles in the contact industry for close to 25 years now, and that does make me feel tremendously old, but I've enjoyed my career, and it's mainly been in personal health and work compensations insurance. My career experience pretty much is focused around that operational transformation, building workforce capability, and operational excellence. So I suppose in a nutshell, my career has been about building the best tools and channels to make customers and users happy. Personally, I'm a mother of a 14-year-old son and a former life, but still use these skills every day. I was a psychologist in the Army, and scary fact, I was actually qualified as a sniper.
Okay, so I'm going to keep this interview really nice, just in case you decide to go back to those skills. And I didn't know you had a military background. I too was ex-Air Force, ex-military, so we've got that in common. How did you wind up though going from the military life and the psychology life and falling into, most people fall into CX somewhere? What was that like? How did that happen for you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I first of all moved into contact centres to put myself through uni. So it was never going to be, I suppose, the career. I was going to move into organisational psychology, which I kind of did fall into through contact centre and operational excellence. But well before CX was a fancy acronym that it is today, the customer's always been the key focal point of my roles. And I suppose, my strategies that I've been building throughout my career and in various roles that I've had were always around the customer and how do we make that experience for the customer better. And EX is vital in that regard. So it was always also, how do I equip my team to be the best that they could be? Over the years, I suppose my passion's really evolved into matching the right CX channel strategy to an organisation. And to be honest, I feel over the last 3 years, it's become probably more competitive than the 22 prior to that. Yep. The reason for that, I think, is let's face it, COVID, has completely changed the customer expectation benchmark. Customers want, companies to know them. They want to get an answer quickly at a time that's convenient to them. And I suppose in my industry, there's been a significant pressure for digital solutions. And in recent years, I suppose my career, my focus has evolved more around thinking around those customer channels differently to try to provide more choice for a customer to self-serve and lower those MER costs for businesses.
There's so much to unpack in what you've just said. I feel like I should be taking notes. It's fantastic. If I can step through some of the questions that are already rolling around in my head. You started in contact centres. Was that on the phone? And if it was, what were you selling? What were you doing? What was the product?
So I was selling general insurance. So it was a personal insurance. I didn't start in the sales department. I sort of evolved into running a sales team, but I was actually doing claims. So if a
Ah.
customer had a motor car accident, I was your girl.
Yeah, love that. Love that. The second thing
Yeah.
you really touched on, and it touches my heart, and others in the industry too. And I'm kind of paraphrasing here, and I want to see if I've got this right. It's
Mhm.
kind of EX equals CX. Is that a fair statement? Like if your staff are happy and they've got a great experience, they'll pass on that great experience. Have you found that to be true, or am I bucking up the wrong tree?
No, it's a pretty basic formula, isn't it? If your people aren't happy, and if you look at an engagement culture, there's so much that goes into that. But basically, do they have the right tools? Do they have the right recognition systems? Do they have the right leadership structure? Are they passionate about what they do? Can they link in with the strategy and buy into the product that they're selling? So all of that will build a happy employee. Yeah, definitely. The higher my engagement results got within my departments, the better the performance outputs for the business were.
Yeah, I've got a session coming up with Luke Jamison, who you may know, that
I do know,
expounds
Luke. Yeah.
EX and has just written a book about that. So I don't want to steal too much of that thunder, but I'd love to get from you, what are some of the practical things that you've done that you found really move the needle on that motivating agents thing? Because, everybody starts out with agent of the month, but that's kind of like the 1970s employee of the month, and it dies a horrible death a few months later. So what
Yeah.
else have you done? What else works?
Yep. And look, I won't steal Luke's gamification thunder either. So I think I think for me, but one of the biggest wake up calls that I had is that an employee needs to believe in what they're doing. Otherwise, a customer can see that it's not genuine. So one of the pivotal points in my career that I made a change is that you can't just use the business strategy and expect an agent on the front line to be able to buy into the jargon, I suppose, of corporate strategies, but actually building a strategy that they can help build and that they believe in and that they set some of the measures of success. And they're involved in whether you want to call it a one percenter or whatever it is, but ways for them to actually make a difference and improve the experience. So that's probably been one of there's thousands of things that you should be doing to make your employees happy, but that was probably one of the wake up calls that I had early in my career.
Yeah, that's a great wake up call too. A great enlightening. Have you found it changed during COVID or post COVID, or is it a whole new world, or is it really just back to doing the same principles?
I think the fundamentals are the same. I think, you need to use different tools to be able to engage your people. Contact center culture is a very hands-on, arms around, and one of the biggest or the toughest things to do moving, a team of 300-400 to working remote, is that they don't have the person beside them to be able to support them after they've had a difficult call. They don't have their leader that can pop up like a meerkat over the desk to, go, "Are you all right? Look, I just heard that was a little bit difficult." So I think making sure that the technology and the capability of technology you're using can help replicate that. Um, so that was probably the biggest change, but the fundamentals of how operational structures and your operational efficiency and strategy, they didn't change. They just had to shift or probably put your foot on the accelerator a little bit more.
Do you think the team leaders made it through that change? It wasn't a slow change. It was almost an overnight. Right now we're all working remote, and you've got
Instant,
to
yeah.
manage your people differently. Do you think most of your team leaders made that through pretty smooth? A small percentage, a big percentage? How did you kind of land on that?
Oh look, God no, it wasn't smooth at all. Um, it's a completely different way of coaching and connecting to your people. So the company that I was working for at the time for COVID, were very aware of that, and we invested heavily in being able to provide our leadership teams the skills to be able to coach and drive performance remotely. So a lot of the leader development programs and tools that I already had in place, we needed to tweak those to be able to go, okay, you can't hear and see and feel the same connection that you could have face to face. You can't see the verbal cues as much as what you could in the office. So it was almost teaching them how to connect again. And we all got wrapped up in this Zoom world of back-to-back Zooms, and we actually had to almost retrain people how to connect with people. So to go how to do daily check-ins, how to set your day up where you are connecting with your people day in and day out, and don't assume just because you're busy back to back and have had a good day that your people necessarily did.
And they too, I guess, the team leaders and managers were dealing with COVID complications of their own, worried about their own health or the health of a parent or aunt or, grandparent or something, and trying to deal with that at the same time. It was a pretty harrowing experience. The last one you talked about, which is also something incredibly dear to my heart, is expanding the channels, and just being where the customer is kind of the way I describe that. What kind of channels have you reached out into, and as you've done that, what have you found? I understand it would be different on a company by company or product by product basis, but in the world that you're in, what kind of channel expansions worked well or are working well?
Yeah, definitely. So, you've got the human assisted channels. So that's a voice, whether that be inbound or outbound work. There's email, and then there's human chat. So it's where you're not talking to the chat bot, but you're actually, almost SMSing with a live person. Also used the AI chatbots, which is generated response to the question that you ask, and also the voice bots. So that was a newer experience. That's probably only been the last year or so, but a voice bot where you prompt or give an explanation of why you've called. And the voice bot may be able to direct you to a different path, such as an app or a web, to be able to self-serve or automate then and there. So a lot of companies have membership cards, and one of the benefits of the voice bot is that it could automatically send a card out if there was an issue. But probably from a contact center world, anyone that works in contact centers knows, talk time, AHT, failure demand, all of that wonderful stuff. But the bot was very good at being able to automate the privacy process, which reduced a lot of the risk incident rates around privacy risks.
So are you talking there in your privacy risks? Are you talking about reading out a policy statement or privacy statement, or are you talking about doing identification and verification up front?
Oh, yes, good clarification, Simon. The identification. So, you've got best practice, standard practice, but, basically we all know a 3-point privacy check. And, it's something, it's probably the biggest risk to a contact center agent, is that, they're trying to develop rapport, they're trying to connect with the customer, they're trying to remember the 20 screens that they've got to use. And sometimes that doesn't come across perfect. And there's huge risks to business and customers if you're not getting that right. So the bot was able to connect, the customer's details when the customer rings, and ask for a couple of questions that the bot's not going to forget to do, because it's not trying to do 25,000 other things. And so that way, straight away, the agent has got all the information. They know they're speaking to the right person, and they can actually focus on getting to the resolution of the customer's inquiry.
Yeah, wonderful. And was there any exploration of third-party channels? I'm talking WhatsApp, Facebook, Messenger, Line, Kakao, any of those? And were they explored and discounted, and if so, why? Or were they not? I'm just interested on where you landed on those.
Yeah, definitely. So, definitely had a large Chinese customer base. So, we had WeChat
WeChat?
as a channel. Yep. So that continues to expand. WhatsApp's definitely is on the radar to be explored, as well as social media channels. However, social media, it's quite expensive to have platforms that support that workload, and unless you've got a really big social media customer base, sometimes it's not the cheapest method to be able to connect to your customers.
Yeah. And are you servicing WeChat in Putonghua or Cantonese, or are you servicing the WeChat channel still in English?
Still in English, but we were looking at some companies that can actually translate into Mandarin.
Hmm.
So while and I do have a couple of agents that actually speak the native language. So generally, if we had those staff rostered on manning the channel, but looking at going, well, how do we expand that to non-native speaking users, and actually having the bot to actually do that translation in between the two languages.
Yeah, there's some pretty amazing real-time translation AI
Yes.
services out there at the minute. Some that have got, the millisecond lag type stuff. It's
Oh,
damn near real time. So
I
yeah, it's
can't
pretty
wait to
incredible.
travel. I remember the last. Oh, sorry, Simon. I think we
No?
cut each other off there. I'm really excited about next time I go to, like, when I went to Europe. Previously I had the translating book and trying to walk around with that. Now just to be able to have my iPhone, and to be able to actually have a conversation with somebody in real time, but completely speak different languages. It's amazing.
Yeah, it kind of blows your mind a bit, doesn't it? That type of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, when are the robots taking over? Let's switch gears a little and talk about. I want you to look into your crystal ball, and where do you think the industry's going? What does this look like in 5 years? We've heard the stories. I'd love your take on. We've heard the stories of, first IVRs were going to kill call centers, then the internet was going to kill call centers, then AI is going to kill call centers. Is that right? Is it not? Where's it going? What's it going to look like?
Yeah, look, I've got a lovely picture that I can paint. So come on the journey with me. Simon, do you
Hmm.
have kids?
I do,
You
and
do?
grandkids.
Oh, beautiful. All right. Well, this is very relevant for you. So think of the sticky, crumbled, handmade Father's Day card that you've got in a drawer somewhere that, from 10, 20 years ago. That your child poured love into, every spelling mistake, every colouring in out of line. And now compare that to the future, or the current. Chat GPT, perfectly written poem, AA image prompt around draw a heart with I love you in the middle. Um, do the two versions elicit the same warm and fuzzy feelings?
Not
Um,
quite.
my experience. So I think, for me, this is my opinion, but the value of the object, or that experience of getting that card, is often tied to the love and the effort behind it. It's something that I call the emotional link, and I think it's what really makes an experience meaningful to us. And look, that's a lovely story, but I think that it's really pertinent, and it applies to CX, in that, what happens when companies start to make all of their experiences digital? Will that experience still be as good? You've got a telco company, customers sitting at home, it's 9 o'clock at night in their gym jams with a glass of wine in their hand. They've remembered they've got a bill to inquire about, and do they want to call into a contact center? Probably not. A digital solution is probably going to go really well hand in hand with CX. But if you think of a different scenario where a parent is, holding their child's hand in a hospital after a terrible diagnosis, wondering what in the world they're going to do, should companies be forcing that interaction via a bot or an app? You, you can, but I'm not sure that's providing the right customer value or the desired brand connection. So I think from a future perspective to your question, we're all just trying to keep up and understand AI developments and how to use that, to make that experience better for the customer. But from a future perspective, I do believe that there is a big risk of AI impacting that human connection, which I do feel is fundamental to exceptional EX.
That has got to be the best analogy that I've heard so far about the migration to AI. And I spend a lot of time in the AI field, as you know. And just even thinking about how does, pick a bank, Acme Bank, and they're getting customer service calls coming in. How are they going to detect whether or not it's the person sitting on the lounge in their gym jams with the glass of red, or it's the person who's calling in because they've just been at the hospital with their kid getting the diagnosis, and how to treat them differently is going to take some fairly fancy footwork by AI. So yeah, I think you're right. I think there's definitely something in this human connection bit. What do you think the future looks like for an agent? I was talking on one of the previous podcasts with Brad Cleveland from the US, and we were just talking about how if AI takes away the simple calls, the agents are just left with the longer, deeper, more complex calls. So how do you see that agent future changing?
Yes, it was something that I was working with my HR team recently, actually, where the profile of an agent is changing, and it's going to change significantly as the tools become easier to use and are more interactive. And they're almost going to need to have an advanced understanding of thinking outside the box. And it's concerning at the moment because there's a real skill shortage in contact centers at the moment. And with this profile, this skill almost needing to increase over the next current to next 5 years. There's a lot of work that needs to be put into developing agents. I think, and there's lots of companies out there that offer, call design or call coaching or framework, or, there's a lot of really good companies that do it really well. But I think probably a watch point for me, and it comes back to that human connection. Simon, have you come across the concept of the keyboard warrior?
No? Do tell.
No? Okay. So the keyboard warriors kind of arise based on, social media. So, somebody will say something on social media, and someone safely in their own home tapping away on their keyboard will say things that they would never say face to face. So that's the term keyboard warrior, and I think especially in the contact center industry post COVID, we're all working from home. Contact center, frontline agents are usually a younger demographic. They're using a lot of technology, and contact centers are using more and more technology to keep us connected. You've got chat programs, you've got social programs. We're all on Zoom or Teams. I've started to see people interact with each other, like it started to change. What people would say to each other over a chat can be very different to how they would say it face to face. And a lot more of our interactions, as they're completed without a face, I'm probably, it's a watch point for me to be able to go, how is that going to impact the way the agents interact with customers? But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we abolish all technology in favor of one-on-one human interaction. Ultimately, my son would never talk to me if online gaming wasn't a part of his world. But I think it's just a risk that human thinking, or human, the emotional intelligence that we have for each other, right? If that's not built into our agent profile or our CX strategy, we could be creating bigger problems for ourselves than, just the first call resolution issues.
Yeah, wow. Great thoughts. Great thoughts. Thank you. You mentioned earlier that you've had 25 years experience in the industry. So clearly you must have started in a call center when you were about 10. And so, because your 25 years has not aged you
You're too
anything like
kind.
my 30 years has aged me. If you met a brand new, just starting out call center manager, what's the one bit of advice you would give them?
I think it's really about understanding what your customers' needs are and how they want to interact with you, and align that to your business OKRs. So I think, all the fundamentals of, setting up your contact center right, look after your people, have the right leadership structure, all of that to me is basic 101. But, if you're creating channels that aren't going to drive the right customer outcome or not drive the right business benefits, then you're just not going to succeed. So take the time, invest, have a good CX team behind you that can help you understand, your customers' needs and to build some customer journey pathways.
It's heartwarming to hear you default to the customer rather than defaulting to, as you say, the business OKRs or the technology or because for our role, it really is all about the customer. I liken it a little bit to playing golf. The golf experts always say you have to bring it all together right at the ball. Well, here we kind of have to bring it all together right at that customer inflection point.
Yeah.
So that leads me kind of into a bit of it's not really a 60-second challenge, just a quick 3 questions that I always love to throw at every session. And the first one is, what does a great customer service experience look like for you? Or can you give us an example of a great customer service experience you've had?
Yeah, look, I think at the moment I'm trying to organise some holidays, so I think it's really brought to light for me what I think is great, because it's been quite a frustrating experience where I continually call. No one's got any record of me previously calling, so that probably the first point is I want to be known, I want to be remembered, I want to feel special, and for someone to know why I'm calling. I've been given different information every single time I've called. So for me, a greater customer experience is that the outcome I trust in and that it's quick. It's not 7 phone calls through to the same line. And that I have a choice around how I want to communicate. I think this recent experience has showed me that they're forcing me into a channel that I'm not getting resolution from, and I then want a choice around a different channel that I might get a better resolution, or that I can sit there at 9 o'clock in my gym jams and be able to do. So it's having choice around, depending on what the inquiry I have, how I want to communicate with a company.
Yeah, wow. Know me, trust, and choice. Fantastic. And you kind of answered my next question, which was going to be, what do you wish companies did more of? And you've kind of explored that already, which leaves me with, what book are you reading right now? What's influencing your world right now?
Look, I'm an avid reader. I read several books a week. So I've actually got 3 on the go right now. My son's also an avid reader, so we've got this 2-person book club happening, where he gets to choose the book. But it's a Greek mythology series called Percy Jackson. So there's I don't even know. I think there's about 7 books in the series, and I'm on book 1 with him. But it's a wonderful way to connect with him, and I'm also learning a lot about Greek gods. So that's one. Another book is, I'm a dystopian fangirl. Like, I love alternate scenarios to our world. So the one I'm reading right now is about, I'm trying to make my way through. It's a zombie apocalypse series. That that really doesn't influence my world at all, Simon. But the one that answers your question is around how it influences is Radical Candor by Kim Scott. It's an oldie but a goodie. And I know a lot of people have read it, but it really helps keep your leadership skills fresh. And, it provides a balance for you to be able to be, how to give clear and honest feedback, to be a better leader without confusing the message with fluff or aggression.
Awesome. Well, we're right at time. This has been a fantastic discussion. Definitely didn't feel like 30 minutes. I feel like we could have gone on for another 2 hours. But Kristy, thank you so much for being on CX Sessions.
That's it for this session. Let us know what you think or recommend someone for a future session at cxii.com.au. This podcast is brought to you by the Customer Experience Innovation Institute. Thanks for joining us, and tune in again soon to hear more CX Sessions.